Hey, what's up, guys? We're back here on the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about which drivers have ran the most races over the last 2 seasons in 410 sprint car racing. So that means that no drivers that have ran 360s, like I'm sure they've ran some 360 races on this list, but they will not be in the total number of races on the board. The total number of races are just in a 410 wing sprint car. Also want to clarify that there are no World of Outlaws drivers on this list. We all know already that the Outlaw guys are going to run over 70 races every single year. And so guys like Spencer Baston, Logan Schuchart, David Gravel, Sheldon Haudenschild, Carson Macedo, and Brock Zierfoss, none of them will make the list, although they were in the top 10 overall in sprint car racing with 152, and the highest was 159 between the Outlaw guys. So none of them are going to be on this list. I thought it'd be more interesting to look at guys who are non-Outlaws, and so they are on the board here in this video. So I think we've got everything out of the way, and let's jump right into it. So the first driver on the list here with 145 races over the last 2 seasons is Freddie Rahmer. And Freddie Rahmer able to win 23 races out of those 145 over the last 2 years, and was able to earn $270,778 in those 145 events. So Freddie Rahmer obviously running in central Pennsylvania for the most part. A lot of these wins coming at the Lincoln Speedway, with a couple others scattered. I think he did have a couple at Williams Grove as well, but for the most part, these wins, 23 of them coming at Lincoln Speedway. And obviously when the big series come to town, Freddie Rahmer is always in the field there with the Outlaws, or whether it was with the All-Stars. So Freddie Rahmer is what would be the 10th driver. So there's 10 drivers on this list, top 10 on this list. Freddie Rahmer is actually tied with the next driver, who is Corey Eliason is the 9th driver. I guess he's tied for 9th with Freddie Rahmer with 145 races as well. Only 5 wins in that time period between 2022 and 2023. But Corey Eliason does have more winnings than Freddie Rahmer. And what's interesting is Corey has not been a full-time member of any series during these 2 years, 2022 and 2023. He did start the season as an all-star in 22, but lost the ride with Rudine Racing about halfway through, and has been running with a bunch of different car owners, whether that's with the Crouch 11, the Indy Race Parts 71, or the Ridge and Sun Racing number 8 car. And so Corey Eliason, 9th on the list, tied with Freddie Rahmer at 145 races. So next on the list at 147 is Zeb Wise. So Zeb Wise, 147 races over the last 2 seasons, 13 wins, and $342,484 in earnings. Now, also want to clarify that the earnings has nothing to do with as far as championship points go, or championship purse. These are strictly winnings from just race purses. So nothing with his merchandise, nothing with his championship money, nothing like that. It is strictly off of purse winnings. And so Zeb Wise at $342,484 in 147 races, which is quite the jump up from Corey and from Freddie, with just 2 more races. Obviously, he did win a couple more races than Corey, but Zeb Wise has been able to win some pretty high-paying events here over the last 2 years to get him a pretty solid total. So next on the list at 150 races is Devin Borden. So 150 races over the last 2 years for Devin Borden, able to get 9 wins, $183,289 in earnings, and which does not sound too good. If you look at the rest of the drivers on this list, Devin Borden is over almost $100,000 behind the next closest driver, being Freddie Rahmer, with 5 more races. So, and he's won a decent amount, 9 wins, most of them coming at Port Royal Speedway, Lincoln Speedway, and a couple of other tracks, mostly in central Pennsylvania. Devin Borden has really become a really good driver in central PA, now with a new team here. I guess it's kind of a new team in 2024 with Stamen Motorsports. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, Devin Borden at 150 races, he is ranked 6th on this list. That brings us to our next driver at 151 races. And that is Tyler Courtney. So Tyler Courtney, obviously been very, very good here over the last 2 years even with the injury that he sustained in 2023, able to get 21 wins over the last 2 years and accrue $565,309 in those 151 races. So, and like I said earlier, it doesn't even count the championship that he would have gotten in 2022 with the All-Stars. So he's definitely pushing well over $600,000 if you count in the championship money that he got from the All-Stars. So Tyler Courtney, very, very good race car driver. Excited to see what he'll do with High Limit this year. And he's made a pretty good living here over the last 2 years alone with over $500,000 in earnings. And this doesn't even count that King's Royal win in there, because obviously that was in 2021. So over the last 3 years, Tyler Courtney has done pretty well for himself in that Clausen Marshall Racing 7BC. All right, now moving into the top 5 of drivers who've ran the most races over the last 2 years in 410 sprint car racing with 157 races. And you might be able to tell who this is just by the amount of money he made. Brent Marks, 157 races over the last 2 years, 31 victories, and over $1 million in purse money. $1,067,535 for Brent Marks in 157 races. It's been a pretty good stretch for the driver out of Pennsylvania, and I don't know if anybody is going to come close to that. Obviously, Logan Schuchart did actually go over that over the last 2 years, but remember at the beginning of this video I mentioned that we weren't going to be talking about the outlaw drivers. We're mainly focusing on who's ran the most races. We know that the outlaw guys are going to be at or near the top. I thought it'd be more interesting to look at guys who aren't World of Outlaws drivers who have been running 75 plus races the last 2 years, and look at some of these guys that are running regionally, maybe running with the All-Stars and regionally and with the Outlaws. I thought that'd be a little bit more interesting. So Brent Marks, 5th on the list. Next on the list is Gio Scelzi. Now, I know we just talked about not going to have outlaws on the list. Gio Scelzi's only been an outlaw for 1 year, so I figured that he would still qualify for this list. 163 races during this time period, 10 wins along the way, $505,895 for Gio Scelzi here in the last 2 seasons. And he ran a ton before he was an outlaw, obviously. Last year, I think the outlaw season was right around that 70-ish mark, 75-ish mark. So he ran a lot that year prior to becoming a World of Outlaws driver, and he's made some pretty good money there in these 2 years. Next on the list, now up into the top 3 of most races ran by a sprint car driver in a 410 over the last 2 years is Anthony Macri. I'm sure a lot of you knew that he was going to be on this list. Also with 31 wins, ties Brent Marks for the most on this board. 174 races, $644,257 in purse money for Anthony Macri in 2022 and in 2023. Obviously, he won a lot of big races at Port Royal and at some other racetracks as well in Pennsylvania, as well as at some other places outside the state of PA as well. Anthony Macri has been pretty darn good. And it's pretty impressive that even when he left his own family car and went into some other cars, still able to put up some of these numbers. And he was out of that car for a pretty good portion of 2023. Second on this list is Justin Peck at 178 races. And I would put money on it. If Justin Peck did not get hurt in that wreck at Bridgeport, he would be number 1 on this list by a pretty wide margin. Remember, he sat out of that car for a couple of weeks trying to recover from that crash. He has 11 wins in those 178 starts and $454,546 in earnings. But Justin Peck, no doubt, would be at the top of this list if he did not get in that injury, or in that crash, I should say, get injured at Bridgeport. That leads us to the top of the board here with 180 races over the last 2 years. Yes, Danny Dietrich is at the top of this list. 180 races, 21 wins, and what is so crazy to see on this, $424,533 in earnings. If you look at who is behind him on this list, Devin, Borden, Zeb Wise, Corey Eliason, and Freddie Raymer, the rest of the drivers on this list are in front of him, and he has the most starts out of all of them. So I found that quite interesting. I thought that purse money would be a little bit higher for Danny Dietrich, especially with 21 wins. Most of them coming in local shows in Pennsylvania, but he's had some good ones there as well in those 21 victories, some higher paying ones. But 424, 533 is what Danny Dietrich is at for the purse. Now, I was going to end this video at that point in time, but I figured it'd be also interesting to look at the purse money and divide it by the amount of races that these guys have ran and give you an idea of how much money they are earning per race. I'm not going to write it on the board, but I'm just going to talk about it. So for Freddie Raymer, with that $270,778 divided by 145, he's at $1,867 per race. Corey Eliason with also 145 races and the $283,005. His average is $1,951 per race that he earns. Zeb Wise, 147 races for $342,484. His average per night is $2,329 per race night in earnings. Devin Borden, the lowest on this list, 150 races, $183,289. His average per night is $1,221, so just over $1,000 a night for Devin Borden. Now numbers start to jump up pretty high here. Tyler Courtney, 151 races with $565,000 in earnings. His comes out to $3,743 per night that team drops the door and gets in prize money. Pretty good number, I would say, for Tyler Courtney. So you would say 2 races per week, he's pushing over $7,000 per night or per weekend. Also on this list, Brent Marks, and this one's the most intriguing with over $1 million in purse money. His number is $6,799 per race, so almost $6,800 per race for Brent Marks over the last 2 years. That is crazy. I mean, he's only about $3,000 off what it pays a World of Outlaws race on a weekly basis that he was getting per night over the last 2 years. Gio Scelzi at $505,000 and 163 races. His average per night is $3,103. And then you look at Anthony Macri, 174 races, $644,000, $3,702 for him. Justin Peck, 178 races and $454,000. He's at $2,553. And Danny Dietrich, the final driver on this list, $424,000 in earnings divided by 180 races gives you $2,358 in an average night of purse money for Danny Dietrich, the guy who has the most races out of anybody in a 410 sprint car over the last 2 years. We know Dietrich's got a pretty hefty schedule put together for 2024 as well, so he's not slowing down anytime soon. We will see him at East Bay Raceway Park for the first race of High Limit, but thought this might be an interesting video for everybody to watch, so that's all I've got today. Also wanted to mention that I will have a video coming out previewing the very first race of the year for High Limit at East Bay Raceway Park, waiting to find out who else is going to be on the property that night. Some guys that would not be on that full-time high roller list, but some guys like a Dietrich, like a Macri, those 2 guys are going to be there. I'm waiting to see who else is going to show up for East Bay, and then we'll put that video out. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much. Almost at 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate the support. We'll see you in the next one.